Hey guys, Neil here by request. Somebody asked me how I get an animated GIF into a banner, and I'm going to show you how to do it using Photoshop CS and ImageReady. If you're using a later edition of Photoshop, you may not need to go into ImageReady. This may be a completely different process, but I'm going to show you pretty much the whole mechanics behind doing it. And here I have Afro Bull's request. It's an animated banner. He wants the same dimensions as I had before for some other people that I did. This is the animated GIF that he wants. And this is the other image that I have, which I incorporated into the banner, as you can see. And going back to the request, the primary colors he wants are red, purple, and green. As you can tell, I put that in here. And the only thing I can't do is he did want it to be a fragmentation banner, which is just not possible. The problem with fragmentation banners is there are some pixels that are partially transparent, which don't work in an animated GIF, and unfortunately it just doesn't translate well. So I'll show you how to do it. Basically what you need to do is take out your bottom layer, which I used for clouds. I show how to make a banner like this in my other tutorials, so I'm just going to skip ahead and hurry things along. But just wipe out a little bit of this particular layer, and then I have another layer that's completely taking up the entire space of the banner. So as you can see, when I remove these two layers, I now have this like gray and white checkerboard pattern. That's what I used to resemble transparency, which kind of resembles like an empty area. And that is the space I will be filling with the animated GIF. So now I'm going to carry it over to ImageReady. Again, this process may be different if you're using a later edition of Photoshop. And then I'm going to open up the GIF. And as you can see, I have 8 frames of animation here, each lasting 0.0 seconds all across the board. And if you play it, it'll just keep doing this infinitely. That's the kind of effect you want. But since the banner is much smaller than the image, we're going to have to shrink this down. So what you want to do is you want to check the image size, and you want to look at the height, because this is 500 by 160, so we're going to lower this down to 160. You don't have to go that far down, but if you want to include the entire GIF, chances are you'll want to do that. But just to show an example, if we don't want to go down to 160, we could go down to something like 200. And there we go. Now, to carry all this over, we first have to make sure there's space for it to go into. So we're going to make another layer here, and when everything gets carried over, when all 8 frames of this clapping animation go into the banner, you'll want them to be on the bottom. So it gets more intertwined with everything, all the other effects like this blotching and this smudging. So I'm going to first highlight all these layers, so everything gets carried over starting frame 1. And we're going to carry it over. And you want to make sure, when you're doing this, you want to make sure snapping is on. It helps you get it into position. So you just go to View and Snap, and that's pretty much it. But then we have to add 8 frames of animation. Since this had 8 frames, you want to make sure you have the same number of frames in the actual banner. And before we get started, I have to lock all these other layers. You may not need to in your edition of Photoshop, but if I try to move around one of the animation layers, it moves around other stuff, which you don't want. So just going to quickly lock all these up. I'm sure there's better stuff than ImageReady right now, but I am still using CS, so it's kind of an old school version of Photoshop. And there we go, that's all we really need to do. Now, on layer 1 and on frame 1, you want to make sure that layer 1 is what's displayed on frame 1. When you go to frame 2, you want to make sure layer 2 is selected like that. Layer 3 on frame 3. Layer 4 on frame 4. And you just keep doing this all the way for all the for all your frames of animation. You want to make sure you have as many frames of animation as you do layers. And when you put it all together, it should look like this. And as you can see, it's now blended in with the rest of the banner, so it looks a lot better. This blotch effect, you may get this later on. It may be a little too strong. Because right now, a lot of that picture is covered up by that big black blotch effect. But you don't want to remove it entirely. You just erase that. You kind of want to make it like fade out, because you often have this happen. Just kind of like fade it out like that, and looks a lot better that way. So when we play it again, it's much clearer. And the other thing you want to do is when you're saving it, you want to make sure you want your colors to be 250. The thing with animated GIFs is when you add more and more color, it tends to decrease the quality because you're only allowed 256 colors. So it's kind of minimizing and compressing all that. The more colors you have, the more you don't want to have too much variance in your colors because it'll start messing it up. And I'll go with 128. I mean, there is a way to, if you go low, like say GIF 632, you will make the file size smaller, but you end up killing a lot of the quality of the banner. And it depends on what you want to do. If you're ending up with a lot of frames of animation, there's been times when I've had over 30 frames of animation, and that's a little too much. You kind of want to make sure it stays at somewhere no higher than 20, really. If it's a lot of work to work with 30, you may be tempted, hey, let me put a whole movie in my banner. You don't want something that big. Alright, now what we're going to do is, we're just going to close that. And I'm going to save this, and you go to save optimized as. Again, this is ImageReady. You may have a completely different system, but, and I'm going to call it this. And I'll press that. And what I'm going to see is, check that out. And basically this is what it looks like. And that is how you make an animated GIF banner. It's not too difficult, but again, your edition of Photoshop may be different. From what I've heard, it's all incorporated into the same system. So you just have to bring up animation and follow the same kind of process. But yeah, that's basically how you do it. Well, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll hear you guys next time. Bye.